This was my first experience with both video and animation. It was a stop-motion video filmed on the LEGO Studio kit from around the year 2000. And at the time, this blew my mind. This kit actually allowed me to make my own movies. Nowadays, with everyone having at least HD quality video in their pockets, this might seem like a weird concept. But when I was 10, the only options available to you were expensive DV video cameras. And these cameras were used for mainly home videos, like filming a birthday party. And my family, having no interest in filming these kinds of events, didn't own one. But with this new LEGO kit, I would dream up crazy concepts that would look like multi-million-dollar projects within my mind. But when I'd try and create these films that I saw in my mind, they would always come out looking rough and poor quality with the terrible webcam camera supplied. I didn't care, I was shaping stories. All you needed was the supplied software that came with the kit and get a basic understanding of the move it a bit capture, move it a bit capture stop motion concept, and you're off to the races. And Legos were perfect for creating stop motion films like this. They were easily shapeable and movable, and the Lego mats would make it easy to hold the Lego characters in place. The limited movement of the figures would make them easy to pose, and my 10-year-old self really experimented with what was possible with this. Around this time, LEGO would also create 3D animated straight-to-DVD.
Coming soon on video cassette.
Or VHS. Movies which I would rent when my parents went to the local Blockbuster. And there was also a number of LEGO video games, which I would play for hours on end. But there was something missing when I would watch these. I couldn't quite put my finger on it then. But as I grew up, I began to realise that the animation in these would ignore the rules of LEGO that were implanted in my head when I would make my own movies. The animations would bend the arms and legs freely and would add CG effects that were completely separate to the LEGO objects that we had available to us when playing with the blocks. This breaking the rules of LEGO that were in my stop motion pieces. But also in every kid's minds when playing with the Legos for hours on end. As I grew up, I graduated to newer cameras and started making films with my friends instead. And all my LEGO films were left to the wayside. But both LEGO and my first experience in making films would continue to have a place in my heart. Now let's fast forward to 2014. The new imagining of what a LEGO movie could be was released, and my mind was blown. All the memories from the past came flooding back. Oh my god, it's the ghost covering thing that I would always step on as a kid. And the spaceman, even that weird cat thing was included. But more importantly, this film finally accepted LEGO for what it is. All the animation would work within the restrictions of movement that were all used when playing with the figures as children. But they could also bend the rules of animation that other traditional animations would have to follow. For example, their arms could easily spin in 360 degrees without restraint. And instead of animating the hair so the object would bend more realistically, the entire head object would be animated. It would embrace both the limitations, but also the benefits of Legos. Instead of trying to make the characters and the animation feel more human. Every time I would watch a scene from the film, it seemed like what it was when I was playing with the toys. And any effects, such as fire, would use the actual LEGO fire bits that would always get stuck in the bottom of our toy box. All the objects and effects in the film were built up of real LEGO objects. Even the explosions were made up of LEGO objects. But for me, the biggest connection that I had with the film was the fact that all the animation arced back to stop motion. All the animations would be created in the same way that a stop motion film would be, where there would be quick movement broken up with stillness, where in stop motion you might repeat a frame, which adds breaks into the movement. At times, the character animation would give the impression of running in twos, which assisted in the stop motion movement effect, as stated before. And for those that don't know what I'm talking about, for traditional hand-drawn and stop motion animation, for any given TV show or film, the filmmakers would decide whether to use ones or twos in their animation. To explain this more, imagine a ball was bouncing up and down, which is one of the first exercises that you would do when studying animation. If we were creating the films in ones, for each frame you would draw a new movement, where the ball would be drawn each time in a new shape and position for every frame. But for twos, you would skip every second frame, instead holding a single frame for 2 frames, hence the name twos. This is the equivalent of editing in 12 frames as opposed to 24 frames that animators would use for ones. This means you'd have half the work needed for animating any given shot. For this reason, that's why many 2D animated TV shows would use twos, and feature films with bigger budgets would use ones. Ones can give you a cleaner, more polished look. But over the years, different types of animation has been associated with using either ones or twos. Amateur brick animation is primarily associated with using twos, and that's why this film would feel like it was using twos, to arc back to this style of animation. The animation would also ignore other conventional animation tropes, such as gravity. Characters would do things like jumping in the air rapidly, and then would almost float in the air. To me, this felt more like it would when you were playing with the figures. But enough nostalgia. To the untrained eyes, you might assume this film was stop motion. I mean, as discussed, it looks like stop motion, which we now know it's not. But there's more to it than just the animation alone. Computer animation is really good at making solid objects. So making plastic in 3D is super easy. However, what isn't so easy is making plastic with dents and scratches, and even seam lines. The filmmakers of this film tried so hard to make the film feel like stop motion, or more like real-life objects. They even included fingerprint and smudge marks. They did such a fantastic job of making the objects feel flawed and played with, this in turn giving the film a tactile feel. But in real life, filming small objects is more than just pointing and shooting. You need to use macro lenses, which allows smaller scenes to be easily put in focus. And using these lenses also creates a specific look that usually has a shallow depth of field. This means the shot will have a small amount of the object in focus, and the rest blurred out. And this film included that effect. The computer-generated shots are created with a shallower depth of field. Even some wider shots had an element out of focus. On a technical level, the film used a new process for the time, and that was the ASIS color space, which would increase the f-stop count within the computer. In layman's terms, this allowed for both lighter parts of the scene and darker parts of the scene to be both recognisable within the frame, without having one part of the scene blown out, in order to make the other part viewable. This would allow for sharper lighting, and Lego objects would reflect light more realistically, without losing other darker elements within the scene. All in all, this allows the lighting within the frame to closely match more realistically how it would in real life. This film finally spoke to my 10-year-old self like no other film could. It spoke to my first venture into animation and film. And that was the point. The Lego Movie, above anything else, was an homage to those brick artists that came before it. It embraces both the limitations and benefits of Lego, and stopped trying to make Lego figures feel more human. It created what it was like for millions of children when they play with Legos every day. But for me, it did something more, because the Lego Movie was finally able to bring my childhood vision to life, and that was the multi-million-dollar films that were in my head. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you liked it. If you did, please do me a solid. Like, subscribe, and ring that bell. Or just watch some of these videos here.